Emotional intelligence, the concept and their utilities and application in administration and governance. Romba easy, shortest, easiest, highly yielding in mark. Okay. எத்திக்கலா எழுதுனா எது எழுதினாலும் மார்க். உங்க மனசுக்கு இது சரி என்று எழுதுனா மார்க். ஓகே. Class 5. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence as a concept, their utilities and applications in administration and governance. Complex, their utilities, their application in administration and governance. Okay. What is emotions? உங்களுக்கு எது புக்கு கொடுத்துருக்காங்களா? புக்கு டிஸ்ட்ரிபியூட் ஆயிடுச்சுல உங்களுக்கு? புக்கு டிஸ்ட்ரிபியூட் ஆயிடுச்சுல? உங்களுக்கு டிஸ்ட்ரிபியூட் ஆயிடுச்சுல? புக் இன்ஸ்டியூட் இந்த புக்கு வரல இது உங்களுக்கு? வரல உங்களுக்கு? Emotional intelligence. Emotions. What is emotions? Emotions is actually a psychological condition, a psychological impulse, or a physiological state of short term, but of being an impulse to act. What is emotions? Emotion is an intense, short-lived, conscious, psychological and physiological state in response to a particular event, of internal and external. That is emotions. Emotions, that means an intense, short-lived, conscious, psychological and physiological conditions or impulses to act to the specific events of internal and the external one. Emotion is a state of spurt, a state of heightened arousal that simultaneously alters our cognitive structures, cognitive process, biochemical process, and physical readiness to respond. Say, actually, emotions is not a state. It is actually a mood. It is actually a condition of movement. Emotion is an impulse of prelude to act to a particular threat or to a particular event of either internal or external source. It represents a condition of a physiological changes or the biochemical changes of of short-lived, but influences our cognitive settings, our cognitive attitude, whether it is safe or hostile, whether it is a danger or abundance, certainty or uncertainty. That is that expressed as action in the behavior. That expresses in the action in the behavior. So that is the emotion. That is the emotion. Emotion is actually a orchestrated conditions of the humanity, of the human. Orchestrated, that means orchestrated, orchestra. That is a planned tunes, that is orchestra. It is an orchestrated conditioning of human impulse that occurred during the Pleistocene. It was the Pleistocene. It is stated as the Pleistocene orchestrations. Pleistocene existed for 2 million years, really, nearly. Pleistocene represents the earliest stage of the human evolution. The earliest stage of the human evolution in which the human survival depends upon its ability to handle certain situations. There are certain emotions, actually 6 types of emotions. 6 types of emotions as the primary emotions. One is the joy. Joy is a state of attitude towards abundance. A state of attitude towards abundance. You see, joy when the Pleistocene human, when roamed for a hungry human individual roaming across the savannas, able to see a particular prey, particular grow of ripened fruits, becomes joy. The conditions of the joy is known for secretion of biochemical, as like the dopamine biochemical hormones get fulfilled. At the same time, it was the fear when suddenly confronted with the predator, suddenly confronted with the tiger or the lion in the savannah, a fear makes a biochemical change of secretion of the adrenaline, and the sugar molecules open throat, especially to the skeletons, to the bones and the legs, in which it represents a psychological state of options, either to flee or to fight or to freeze. That is the psychological options with the fear, a type of the emotional impulse or emotional state. Then sorrow represents emotional conditions in which a million years of repeated behavior of the seeing a death of the near one, a death of a mate, death of the kinsman of the Pleistocene man, a repeated behavior, a feelings with the death, a feeling. It led to certain biochemical changes. Tears are being secreted, and a conditions of grief, conditions of the grief to be channeled out, to be channeled out, the grief to be channeled out through crying, through the crying. So it is the sorrow. It is the sorrow, joy, fear, sorrow, joy, fear, hate, hate towards hate. So hate, a type of emotion, of expressing aversion, expressing the aversion. So these are all impulses. These are all impulses, a prelude to act. The term emotion means not a condition, but to act. A Latin word called as move. It is a move. The Latin word, it derives from the Latin word that is called as the move. These are all the emotions that was conditioned during the Pleistocene, that was conditioned during the Pleistocene epoch. Pleistocene epoch in the human, Pleistocene epoch in the human. These are the conditions of the emotion. So it is the Pleistocene epoch, our physiological conditions, psychological conditions are adapted to the Pleistocene repertoire, Pleistocene conditions, Pleistocene conditions, which is completely different from the modern day conditions. Modern day conditions seems to have a discrepancy with the Pleistocene. A discrepancy with the Pleistocene. Pleistocene emotions are misfitted to the modern day. Emotions were actually an act of survival in the evolution. It is rational act of survival. It is the emotional behavior represented as a repeated act of million years. To those events were all orchestrated, stamped, and stamped as conditioned behavior called as the emotional behaviors. So these emotional behaviors are adaptive to the Pleistocene epoch, but not to the 21st century, 20th and the 21st century. 20th and the 21st century conditions are different. The conditions are the different one. 21st, the modern conditions, since the modern conditions are different, that makes the emotions of the Pleistocene, emotions of the Pleistocene one is completely different from the modern day. So Pleistocene emotions are designed for rapid survival. Pleistocene emotions operates in the form of reaction, mostly reactive behavior in binary, fight or flight, eat or eat, do or die, are binary codes. And Pleistocene emotions based on community solidarity, the outright community solidarity, based on instant physical action. Whereas 20th century, modern day, it is the modern day act of survival is Pleistocene act of survival is determined by nature, natural selection. Is determined by the natural selection. Modern day act of survival depended on cultural selection. It is the culturally selected behavior. The culturally selected behavior, which is having a contrast with the Pleistocene traits. For example, the Pleistocene traits represent as a instant physical action, but modern day trait, survival depends on be patient, be patient, thinking and analysis, be patient, thinking and analysis in multinodal forms. Pleistocene survival is based on community solidarity, group solidarity, whereas modern day survival depends on universal adaptability, neutrality and equity. Neutrality and equity. Pleistocene survival depends upon instant reactions, whereas the modern day survival depends on a long gestation, the plans of long gestation for the survival. So there exists a critical contrast and discrepancy, which need an ability to manage that led to emotional intelligence. That led to the emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is an ability of understanding the emotions of oneself and others. Understanding the emotions of oneself and others, and to manage those in a socially desirable ways. Understanding the emotions of oneself and others, and to manage it of a socially desirable way, that is called as the emotions. That is called as the emotional intelligence. That means emotional intelligence is actually perceiving the emotions of oneself. That means understanding the emotions of oneself, understanding the emotions of the oneself, and understanding the emotions of others, and managing ourselves and others in a socially desirable way. That is the management. It was Daniel Coleman who studied the emotional intelligence in his work of emotional intelligence, who made an exploratory study of emotional intelligence, stated that there exist three premises of defining the emotional intelligence. That means self-awareness, self-management, and the self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness. Self-awareness, self-management, and the social awareness are the three components of the emotional management, emotional intelligence. One is the self-awareness. Self-awareness is a condition in which the individual undergo consciousness. A individual undergo the consciousness. Individual undergo the consciousness of understanding the state of the state of self conditions at the time. The state of self conditions at that time. It is the state of self conditions of understanding, the state of self conditions, the degrees of emotions that exist at that time. It is the self-awareness in which the individual recognizes the point of emotional triggers. Individual expresses the point of emotional triggers. A self-consciousness of roots on the conditions of anger, anxiety, pride, anxiety, and the pride. Able to identify the moment that it sparks in the subconsciousness. Able to identify the moments that it sparks that self-consciousness, and tracing back the past experience of that is the self-awareness. Self-awareness provides the objective lens of pausing our act. That means restraining our act. Objective lens of restraining our act. Then self-management. Self-management is the ability that differentiate between stimulus and response. Self-management is the ability that ability to differentiate the choices, when an unexpected crisis like insulting remark or intense workplace stress, instant workplace stress, in which the individual ability to apply the character, it allows to breathe and calm your nervous system to exercise control on ourselves. That is the self-awareness, self-management. Then social awareness. The social awareness, that means understanding the emotions of others. Understanding the emotions of others. Emotions is actually the DNA of social relationship. It is stated that is of the DNA of the social relationship. Understanding the hidden grief of a mourning community. Understanding the anger and anxiety of the protesting crowds. That is the social awareness. A social awareness, instead of being deaf to the people, understanding their inner impulse, understanding their collective impulse. So this seems to be the three basic features of the emotional intelligence. The three basic features of the emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence could be categorized into positive and negative. Could be categorized into the positive and the negative. What are the positive emotional intelligence? The positive emotional intelligence, that means certain behavioral actions could be stated as an outcome of the positive emotional intelligence. A positive emotional intelligence known for stability, known for the stability in behavior, stability and consistency in the behavior, stability and consistency in the behavior. Positive emotional intelligence are also known for insights, a behavioral action with a greater insights and foresights, greater insights on the foresights. Positive emotional intelligence, known for the behavior that expresses the fortitude, fortitude. That means an ability to withstand the calamities, the misfortunes and calamities that terrifies the individual. Ability to withstand the misfortunes and calamities that terrifies the individuals. Positive emotional intelligence, positive behaviors of the positive emotional intelligence, known for compassions, known for the compassion in the actions, known for the compassion in action. It expresses the human values of compassion, known for the self-confidence, operates with the internal locus of control. These are all the aspects of the positive emotional intelligence as Bhagavad Gita considered. The state of the individual, it is a state. Bhagavad Gita highlights this state, idealizes this state as Siddha Prajna. Siddha Prajna as a state of fortitude, a state of extreme fortitude. That means able to withstand in the conditions of calamities, as a state of being above the emotions, a state of being above the emotions, Siddha Prajnanaga Iru, as the Bhagavad Gita states, a state of being above the emotions, a state of managing the emotions. It states that the emotions are like the horse. Horses. Emotions are the horses of feelings. To be controlled like a chariot driver. We ourselves to act as a chariot driver of controlling the horses. If the horses controlled the chariot, the life journey would be disaster. It would be determined by the external locus. The horses of feelings to be controlled by the driver. We should be the master. That masterity conditions, that conditions of the masterity, that conditions of the self-enlightenment are stated by Bhagavad Gita as the Siddha Prajna. Also stated by Aristotle. It was Aristotle who first defined the concept of the emotional intelligence. Aristotle considered the life of Eudaimonia, the life of Eudaimonia. That means the life of excellence. The life of excellence is a life of flourishing humanity. A life of flourishing humanity. A life of the flourishing humanity. So emotional intelligence of positive. Emotional intelligence of positive. Known for trust. Known for a vibrant society of trust. A vibrant society of trust. and the vibrant society of confidence, a vibrant society of confidence, the trust and confidence, a vibrant society of ethical stability in against the emotions, in against the emotional intelligence of negative, the emotional intelligence, negative emotional intelligence. What are the negative emotional intelligence? Against to that, it is not stability, it is unstable. It is the unstable. It is unstable and the inconsistence. Unstable in inconsistence. In inconsistence. Unstable and inconsistence in the individual level, in the social level, in the individual level, in the social level. Always known for a crisis, always known for a crisis of day to day, a crisis of day to day, a crisis in social relations, a crisis in the social relations, crisis in social relations. It is not the compassion. It is not the compassion. It is known for competence and greed. Competence, the extreme competence and the greed in the social relations, excessive competence and greed in the social relations, which represents a life of fatalism, a life of fatalism, a life of fatalism, and operated by the dependent on externalities, depended on the externalities, life of fatalism depended on the externalities. It is the life of emotional turmoils every time, the life of the emotional turmoils, which leads to the condition, conditions. That means the condition of crisis, the crisis of the crisis of conscience, the crisis of conscience and consciousness, the crisis of conscience and consciousness, a crisis of conscience and consciousness, a crisis of conscience and the crisis of consciousness occurs in the conditions of emotional hijacking, in the conditions of the emotional hijacking, in the conditions of the emotional hijacking in social relations, and emotional hijacking in administration, emotional hijacking in the social relations, and the emotional hijacking in the administration. You say a condition when a severe flash flood hit a district where the hundreds of angry, displaced citizens gather outside the relief camp shouting that the food supplies hadn't yet arrived, which is to be met by a civil servant, where the civil servant of low emotional quotient, shall get defaulted to emotional hijacking. Yeah, it is a crisis of conscience, where the officer feel what happens, a officer feel personally attacked and get defensive, locks the office room and orders the police action on the people. The result is crisis. Crisis breeds the crisis. That means public alienation, backlash on the law and order crisis. That is law and order crisis. Whereas the officer of high emotional quotient, officer of the higher emotional intelligence, able to respond in his able to respond in his high degree of soft skills. Officer recognize that the public anger stems from fear and hunger, but not of personal enmity. Not of the personal enmity. So he steps out without a high security, patiently listen the representatives, transparently explain the bottleneck, logical bottleneck and the impeding obstructions, also mobilize the local youth to help in order to distribute, That means the crisis of conscience able to overcome. See, what is the crisis of conscience? Which means a conditions of emotional turmoil, The conditions of the crisis of conscience in the public administration. One is the condition of emotional turmoil. Then the second one is the condition of unresolved ethical dilemmas. The second condition, that is the unresolved ethical dilemmas. Ethical dilemma is a condition in which a civil servant confront with two opposite polarized ethical traits. A civil servant has to confront, especially when the clash of public values, polarized public values. That means a clash of polarized public values. A public value is a procedural protocol. Following a procedural protocol is a value in public service, is a public value. At the same time, the victim is known for her inability, structural inability in the flood relief camp. For example, the project affected family victim of being illiterate, old age, don't have the documents. It is the ethical dilemma. That means assisting the victim in the lines of compassion, at the same time to follow the sanctity of the relief procedures. Mercy and justice, ethical dilemmas. Mercy and justice as the ethical dilemma. So two conditions. The crisis of conscience affects in three levels. Three levels of the public servant. That means CAB. 3 levels of CAB. That is cognitive level. It is the cognitive level. The crisis of conscience in the cognitive attitude, of the civil servant, of being committed to his profession. Cognitive level. Then affective level. Crisis of conscience the impact in the cognitive levels, in the cognitive layer, affective layer. That means feelings. The feelings are the affective feelings level. Then the behavioral level. That means a behavior of becoming precedence. Becoming the precedence. In which there exist two options to expectations of the result. That means the options of the civil servant of the low emotional quotient, known for the default procedures, known for the default procedures, the default procedures as established, as followed default procedures in a dehumanized form, with the dehumanized values, known for extreme neutrality on the dehumanized values, whereas a civil servant of high emotional quotient, known for the alternate solutions of securing the emotions and the foresight of the action, securing the emotions and the foresight of the action, in which it is highly influenced by the human values, finding a solution of compromise between the human values and the public values, in which the negative emotions, the conditions of the negative emotions could be resolved. So this is the nature of negative emotional intelligence. The positive emotional intelligence enabled to establish a vibrant societies, whereas the negative emotional intelligence, known for the conditions of crisis of conscience, the evolution of emotional intelligence, as administrative quality, right from the beginning of the public administration. So it is the yearly public administration, in which the two important thinkers, one is F.W. Taylor, the two important thinkers, one is the F.W. Taylor, and the second one is the Max Weber, the F.W. Taylor and the Max Weber, F.W. Taylor, who are known for the theories of yearly public administration. F.W. Taylor, who considered that a man as a mission, the functions of the man can be managed by a mechanical law, is operated with the rigid commands, and professional excellence to be evaluated with the output. That was the Taylorian view of modern administration. In same, it was Max Weber, known for the sociology of bureaucracy, Max Weber, known for the sociology of the bureaucracy, Max Weber came out with an idea of an ideal bureaucracy. It was called as the ideal bureaucracy. The ideal bureaucracy, Weberian ideal bureaucracy, based on the order, stability, based on two objectives. One is the stability and order, based on the stability and order. Stability of bureaucratic structure based on the order, where he defined this ideal bureaucracy as a structure. It is a hierarchical structure as the pyramidal structure, from the topmost bureaucrat to the lower one. The hierarchical structure and functions with the rules and procedures. Functions with the rules and procedures. The rules and the procedures. That means the rules and procedures in which the authority represents ascendancy in order, and command and descendancy in order. Say that is then behavioral. The behavior is in the form of the behavior to be defined in the form of procedures. The procedural behavior, the procedural behavior of hierarchy, the procedural behavior of the hierarchy, the behavior to be based on certain ethics, the professional ethics and the values, professional ethics and the professional values. Behavior was based on loyalty. Behavior is based on the loyalty. And behavior is based on command. Behavior as based on the executionary command. So that is the ideal bureaucracy in which both Max Weber and Taylor, considered that emotions is nothing to do here. Both Max Weber and Taylor stated emotions are dangerous for effective administration. Emotions are dangerous to the effective administration, and emotions impedes stability. Emotions impedes the stability and orderliness of the administration. Impedes the stability and orderliness of the administration, and emotion is antithema to the neutrality, was against to the neutrality. This was the theme. This seems to be the attitude towards the emotional intelligence from the advent of modern public administration. Because it was the age, the Taylor and the Weberian attitude of administration based on the age of industrialism, the age on industrial revolution. Industrial revolution demanded the modern bureaucracy based on neutrality, based on the extreme neutrality in which the emotions has no place in it. And both on everything is based on the themes of capitalism, in which the professional ethos were sculptured in the either sculptured the objectives of promoting free market values, promoting the free market values. And it is the age of the classical economists who considered the human labor as one among the unit of production, a materialistic unit of production, one among the materialistic unit of the production. That is the consideration of emotional intelligence in the administration. But with the advent in the post-war scenario, the post-war developments, post-war period known for the new factors of the post-war period, the new factors. It was the factors was due to failures, the failures of ideal bureaucracy, of Weberian type, or the modern bureaucracy of the Taylor, the failure of the ideal bureaucracy, the failure of classical economist theories, the advent of development economists based on the human capabilities, based on the measures of human capabilities, advent of the new economist, and the advent of governance, the advent of modern governance, in which there was a greater transformation towards the governance and the bureaucracy in the world, a greater transformation with the emphasis on social justice, as the most cherished value of democracies, social justice of the most cherished values of the democracies, and with the emphasis on the delivery of the public goods, in the third world, delivery of the public goods in the third world, and the necessity of the human factor in administration, in which the emotional intelligence was actually discovered in 1960s, became the most prominent features of the modern bureaucracy and the administration thereafter. So emotional intelligence is the outcome of new principles of governance, governance which is based on the triad, of the role of government, the role of market, and the society. Role of government, role of market, and the society. Governance is based on the emergence of the private in production of public goods, in delivering the public goods as the education, health, the advent of role of private, in which the government monopoly in delivering the public goods was replaced by the private. And the modern governance is based on inclusiveness, the inclusive future of governance, in which the human factor is considered as most important one, where the emotional intelligence has gained its prominence, Emotional intelligence has gained its prominence. See, advent of emotional intelligence represents a new attitude, replacing the professional competence emphasize from intelligent quotient to the emotional quotient. Intelligent quotient to the emotional quotient. Intelligent quotient towards the emotional quotient. Intelligent quotient is considered as a skill, as a skill of public administration, as a skill of civil servant evaluated. Intelligent quotient is the ability of managing and interpreting the numerical analysis, then logical analysis, analyzing the symbols, analyzing the numeric data, analyzing the numeric data. Intelligent quotient is highly dependent on mathematical skills, and the intelligent quotient is away from the human relations, and intelligent quotient as a skill is analyzed at the time of entry levels. At the time of the entry levels, it was emphasized in the levels of recruitments. So it is the intelligent quotient as the yardstick of a civil service servant's professionalism was followed up to the 1980s, which led to, with the result of emphasis on intelligent quotient, which resulted in breed of managers, Efficient managers are one. Managers are efficient, known for efficiency in execution of command and procedures. Second one is an efficient managers known for emphasis on the output. Then third, efficient managers known for materialistic value assessments, which emphasize more on the GDPs, materialistic values and assessment. Efficient managers deals with the quantity of the output in the public administration. Which led to missing of human factors. What is the result of intelligent quotient? Result of intelligent quotient in administration led to disparity between materialistic growth and humanistic development. For example, Dr. Amartya Sen stated that GDP growth is antithema to the human development. GDP growth is antithema to the human development. In the developing countries, more in developing countries, because growth in GDP impedes impedes the access to human capabilities, impedes the access to human capabilities in categorizes the people into once born and twice born. Once born represents the individual category, is a category of individual. Once born is a category of individual who born and grown up, who born and grown up with the grown up in a socio-economic environment of adequacy and abundance. That means in a socio-economic environment of adequacy and governance. Adequacy and governance. Once born, known for a worldview of self, a worldview of self, a worldview of the self. It's considered that the attitude of once born is of his own. Once born is the outcome of the way of socialization. The outcome of the way of socialization. How we got socialized. An individual of silver spoon, born with a silver spoon, with abundance and adequateness, known for his worldview, considered that choices are limited, and choices are limited based on the precedents, would become managers, become the managers, well, because of his experience, whereas the twice born, but the once born act with more with the intelligent quotients. You see, more with the intelligent quotient, peoples of the best brains, but the UPA government, under Dr. Manmohan Singh, known for the best brains of this nation, where UPA government consists of Kapil Sibal. But Dr. Manmohan Singh himself, foreign educated, best of the economic mind of this century, known for Kapil Sibal, best of the legal practitioners, known for the governorship of Raghuram Rajan, a world-renowned citizen, but known for a government of scams, the government of historic scams, and the log jams, and the log jams, functions more with best of the intelligent quotients. The example of the intelligent quotients, it is the UPA government laid foundations for Aadhaar as a biometric card. So that is of the managers. Whereas the pragmatism talks about twice born. Twice born represents the individuals whose self is out of struggle throughout the life, out of struggle throughout the life, and known for his self, the self of the individual, whose worldview is not a worldview known for detachment, whereas the category of the once born is known for the worldview of being the part of it. It is the worldview of detachment, and known for alternate choices. Known for the alternate choices. Don't work with the precedents, but with the new paradigms. New paradigms of thoughts. New paradigms of thoughts and the alternate choices. And the alternate choices. Who becomes the leaders? Who becomes the leaders? A leaders work with a greater self-confidence. A greater self-confidence. A leaders work with greater insights. Greater insights. Leaders work with greater fortitude, greater foresight. Greater foresight. A leaders work with a greater degree of soft skills. A greater degree of soft skills. Soft skills. Soft skills are nothing but the emotional quotients. The emotional quotient. Soft skills are the composite of adequate, composite of soft skills or composite of, they are the composite of the human values. They are composite of the human values in every act, in every actions, the human element or the human factors. They were the composites of the ethics, a composites of the ethical minds. They are known for their ethical mind. Ethical mind. They always known for self of being independent. Self of being independent from the socio-cultural environment. Self of being independent from the socio-cultural environment. Socio-cultural environment. Known for the higher degree of the emotional quotient. Emotional quotient. And a leader who makes the opportunities of calamities, who transform the opportunities of calamities into opportunities, events of calamities into opportunities of social capital, event of calamities into opportunities of social capital, opportunities of the social capital. You see, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Mandan Scheme. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Mandan Scheme. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Mandan Scheme. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Mandan Scheme as a reaction to the failure of farmers' law. Reaction to the failures of the farmers' law, where the NDA government, the farm laws, the failure of the farm laws, the failure of the farm laws, the failure of the farm laws was recognized as an opportunity of failure of the farm laws enabled us an opportunity to understand the necessity of the microcredit. Necessity of the microcredit. You see, the problem of microcredit, the problem of microcredit exists since 1990s in India. The problems resulted in farmer suicide since 1990s in India. The advent of farmer suicide and farm sector distress, in which the UPA government responded intelligently, providing with the existing system of compliance in which UPA government established microcredit windows in NABARD. Where the commercial banks and commercial banks and the NABARD established a separate microcredit windows. Then UPA government reacted in the form of establishing the farm credit as a part of priority sector lending, as a part of the priority sector lending. Then UPA government reacted the farm credit